Look around you. The most confident person in the room is rarely the most capable. The loudest voice at the table is seldom the wisest. And the person who got the promotion you deserved, they probably have no idea why they shouldn't have gotten it. This isn't a coincidence. This isn't bad luck. This is a system working exactly as designed, and the design is far more disturbing than you've ever been told. There is a pattern hiding in plain sight inside every office, every government, every institution humanity has ever built. A pattern so consistent, so predictable, so mathematically reliable that once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And the worst part? The people benefiting from this pattern are completely unaware of it. They sleep soundly. They accept awards graciously. They give speeches with unshakable confidence. While you, the one who actually understands the depth of the problem, lie awake at night questioning yourself. Why does this happen? Why do the wrong people keep rising? And what does it say about the world and about you that you even noticed? Let's go back to 1969. A Canadian psychologist named Lawrence J. Peter was watching something that bothered him deeply. In hierarchies, corporations, militaries, governments, schools, people kept getting promoted based on their performance in their current role, not their ability to handle the next one. A brilliant engineer becomes a terrible manager. An exceptional teacher becomes a catastrophic principal. A gifted salesperson becomes a disastrous sales director. Peter named this the Peter Principle. In a hierarchy, every employee tends to rise to their level of incompetence. But here's where it gets darker, much darker. Peter was describing a mechanical flaw, a structural quirk. What he didn't fully account for was something far more sinister lurking beneath the surface, something that psychologists David Dunning and Dunning-Kruger would begin to map out nearly 30 years later in 1999 in a study so unsettling it won a Nobel Prize. Their finding: the least competent people in a given domain are not just incompetent, they are profoundly unaware of their own incompetence. They lack the very cognitive tools needed to recognize their own failure. It's not arrogance in the traditional sense, it's a neurological blind spot, a structural gap in self-awareness that creates an illusion of mastery precisely where mastery is absent. Think about that for a moment. The person who knows the least feels the most certain. The person who understands the most feels the most doubt. This is not an accident of personality. This is how human cognition operates under conditions of limited knowledge. To know what you don't know, you first have to know enough to recognize the gap. And if you don't know enough, you can't even see the gap exists. The surgeon who has performed 1,000 procedures trembles slightly before each incision because they know everything that can go wrong. The medical student who has watched one procedure is certain they could do it themselves. That confidence gap, that dangerous, seductive inversion, is not a character flaw. It is a feature of the human mind operating in its default mode. And society, rather than correcting for it, rewards it. We promote the confident, we elect the certain, we follow the loud, we fund the bold pitch, even when the substance behind it is hollow. Somewhere deep in our evolutionary wiring, we confuse the signal of confidence with the signal of competence, because for most of human prehistory, the two were correlated. The strongest person usually was the most competent at survival. The loudest voice usually did know where the predators were. But we don't live in that world anymore. And that ancient wiring is now being exploited, sometimes deliberately, sometimes unconsciously, by people who have never had to develop real skill because the performance of skill was always enough to get them through. Which brings us to something that might already be stirring in your chest right now, the quiet, uncomfortable question of whether you've ever been passed over, overlooked, or outmaneuvered by someone who simply seemed more sure of themselves than you were. Someone whose certainty you mistook for capability. Someone who, in the privacy of their own mind, never once questioned whether they deserved to be there. I want to speak directly to you for a moment, not in generalities, not in theory. If you're watching this, there's a good chance you are someone who thinks deeply, someone who second guesses, someone who, before speaking, considers 3 counter-arguments to your own position. Someone who, when given responsibility, feels the weight of it rather than the thrill of the title. You have probably been told at some point in your life that you need to be more confident, more assertive, that you think too much, that you hesitate too long, that you need to project more authority. And maybe you internalize that as a personal failing, a weakness, something to fix. What if I told you it was the opposite? What if that hesitation, that self-questioning, that awareness of your own limitations, is actually the mark of someone who has climbed far enough up the mountain of knowledge to see how vast the mountain actually is. What if your doubt is not weakness, but depth? What if the people who never doubt themselves have simply never climbed high enough to see the view? There is a concept in Zen Buddhism called Shoshin, beginner's mind. So the idea that true mastery is not the elimination of uncertainty, but the capacity to hold uncertainty with grace, to remain open, to keep learning even when the world tells you that you've already arrived. The Zen masters say, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. The incompetent ruler has no beginner's mind. They have a closed mind, a finished mind, a mind that stopped asking questions the moment it received its first compliment. And that is precisely why they can project such impenetrable certainty, because there is nothing inside that certainty to challenge it. You've seen this person. Maybe you've worked for this person. Maybe you've been governed by this person. They don't know what they don't know. And because they don't know it, they move through the world without friction, without the weight of self-examination, without the paralysis that comes from actually understanding how complex reality is. And meanwhile, you, who understand the complexity, who feel the weight of the decision, who genuinely care about getting it right, you hesitate, you qualify your statements, you say, I think, and maybe, and it depends. And the room reads that as uncertainty, as weakness, as someone who doesn't belong at the table. This is the trap. This is the mechanism. And if this idea has already landed somewhere deep in you, if something in you just exhaled and said yes, finally, someone is naming this, then don't go anywhere, because what comes next changes everything. There's a question that philosophers and social scientists have wrestled with for centuries, and it goes something like this. If systems reward incompetence and punish depth, are we meant to simply accept it, conform to it, perform the confidence we don't feel, hollow ourselves out to match the shape of a broken world? Here is the answer that most motivational content will not give you, because it is not comfortable, and it is not simple. No, but also not quite. The first thing to understand is that the system rewarding incompetence is not designed by evil, it is designed by shortcuts. Human beings, in groups, are extraordinarily poor at measuring real competence in complex domains. We cannot see inside someone's mind. We cannot witness the hours of struggle that preceded the moment of apparent mastery. We can only observe what is visible, body language, tone, language, presence, and we make our judgments from there. This means that the solution is not to abandon genuine competence in favor of performance. It is to learn, strategically, selectively, the language of confidence that translates your actual depth to an audience that has no other way of receiving it. This is not dishonesty. This is translation. It is the difference between having something to say and knowing how to be heard. The philosopher Aristotle understood this. He called it ethos, credibility, and placed it alongside logos, logic, and pathos, emotion, as a pillar of genuine persuasion, not fake confidence, not performed bravado, but the kind of grounded, earned, deliberate presence that says, I have thought about this, I know what I'm talking about, and I am here. The second thing to understand is that the Dunning-Kruger Effect is not a prison sentence for the incompetent. It is a stage, one that almost everyone passes through, including you, including me. The difference between those who stay trapped in false confidence and those who break through it is not intelligence. It is feedback. It is the willingness to be wrong, to be corrected, to sit in the discomfort of not knowing and resist the desperate human urge to resolve that discomfort prematurely with false certainty. The people who rule through incompetence are, in a very real sense, people who never developed a tolerance for that discomfort. They found the exit, the shortcut of certainty, and they took it, and the world, tragically, handed them the keys. But there is a third thing, and this is the one that most people never reach. This is the hidden door in the back of the cave, the thing that changes not just your strategy, but your entire relationship to this problem. The deepest reason incompetents rule is not that they are rewarded by broken systems. It is that the genuinely capable often choose, consciously or not, to step back, to not compete, to decide that the game is too corrupt or too exhausting or too beneath them. They withdraw their gifts from a world that doesn't seem to want them, and in doing so, they leave the field to exactly the people they find most frustrating. The philosopher Edmund Burke understood this 2 centuries ago when he wrote that the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil, or mediocrity or incompetence, is for good people to do nothing. But exists a secret even deeper than this, one that philosophy has whispered for centuries, but that we rarely allow ourselves to hear fully. The incompetent ruler is not your enemy. They are your mirror. Every time you see someone failing upward, there is a question hidden inside that observation, not about them but about you. What are you withholding? What are you waiting for? What version of yourself are you protecting from the risk of being seen, being wrong, being vulnerable enough to lead? The Stoics called this amor fati, the love of fate, of what is. Not passive acceptance, not surrender, but the radical acknowledgement that the world as it is, with all its dysfunction and injustice, is the exact world in which your transformation must take place. Not some better world, not the world after the system is fixed. This world, now. The incompetents rule in part because they are willing to stand in the arena, because they are immune to the fear of being wrong, not because they are brave, but because they are unaware. Your awareness, your depth, your sensitivity, these are weapons, not liabilities. But weapons only matter if you're willing to carry them into the fight. Here is what remains when everything else is stripped away. The world does not automatically reward truth or depth or competence. But that has never been a reason to withhold them. The greatest thinkers, the greatest leaders, the greatest creators in history did not succeed because the world was ready for them. They succeeded because they refused to wait for it to be ready. You were given a mind that questions, a heart that feels the weight of responsibility, a spirit that refuses the easy comfort of false certainty. These are not curses. They are the architecture of someone capable of genuine transformation, for themselves and for the world around them. The disturbing reason incompetents rule is not that they are stronger than you. It is that they are, in one very specific way, more committed. Committed to showing up, committed to claiming space, committed to being present in a world that is deeply imperfect and showing up anyway. The question, the only question that matters now, is whether you are willing to do the same. Not by abandoning what makes you deep, but by bringing that depth into the room, by speaking when you would rather stay silent, by leading when you would rather observe, by allowing your competence to be seen, even when the seeing feels like risk. The incompetents have ruled long enough, and you have been quiet long enough. If this video names something you've felt for years, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below. Tell me your story, because you are not alone in this. And if this channel has earned a place in your thinking, subscribe, because this journey is only beginning and the next revelation is closer than you think. The world does not need more noise. It needs more of you.